And I want to leave you with a few thoughts, a few learnings on purpose, innovation, and how do you really embed this into your organizations. And hopefully, you would see these as notes from one practitioner to another, and we can have a dialogue on what can be some ideas, thought starters that we can all take back to embed purpose really into our organizations. So let me start by asking you a question, an exercise rather. 212 grams. Can I ask you to look around on your table, what you are carrying with you, and identify something that you think weighs close to 200 grams? On the table, Savan's holding a phone, an Apple Watch. Okay, so let's do this exercise together. And I think this is better if you do this standing. Can I ask all of you to stand, please? And I guess all of you have a smartphone with you. Take your phone, take your smartphone, and I want you to place it on your palm and just feel the weight. An average smartphone is anywhere from about 170 grams. And if your phone is like mine, which has a case, it's likely about 220 grams. And please sit. And you know now how much 212 grams weighs, right? 212 grams is the lowest recorded weight of a preterm baby in 24 weeks who was nursed back to health. 212 grams. What you just held in your hands was the weight of that baby. On an annual basis, there are about 130 to 140 million babies in the world. 1/10 of them, 14 million babies, are preterm in the world. And if I were to ask you, how many of you here in this room know a family who had a preterm baby? Likely that 80 to 90% of you are going to put your hand up. Right? When a baby is preterm, there are many things that are different, right? The baby's skin, which is one of the largest organs in the body, treated as an organ, is significantly underdeveloped. The baby's skin is about 1/3 the skin of a regular baby. A simple medical tape can actually rip the skin off, right? And to be able to protect the skin, to be able to maintain this, to be able to nurse this baby back to health in NICU, where they usually stay for the rest of the gestation period, you will need to take extreme care to be able to nurse these babies back to health. And I'm going to share with you one innovation that we have been very closely associated with, and then talk a bit about it after that. Can you play the video, please?
Go to the ends of the earth for you, to make you feel my love. Go to the ends of the earth for you, to make you feel my love.
What needs to come together to be able to make a preemie diaper are multiple things. And this is not just technology, this is material science to make sure that the quality of the diaper, the material that you have is soft on the skin. The technology to be able to just make the diaper, slowing down the machines significantly. And finally, to make sure that the engineering around how do you make it doesn't produce any sound as well. One of the biggest threats to a baby in NICU is sound. The baby's brain is still developing, which means that if there is even a small noise in the NICU, it can cause trauma for the baby, right? So multiple things that go into this integrative innovation, as I call this. This is the actual size of a diaper of a preemie. right? So this is the actual size of a preemie diaper. And what I'm carrying with me is not even the smallest preemie diaper that is there in the world. I mean, we make this, and of course, many other companies make this as well. This is one example of what I would call as integrative innovation. Let me share with you the next example. 2 seconds. I'm going to count 2 seconds and then I'll tell you what this is. 1, 2, 3. Did anything change? Nothing much happens in 2 seconds, right? But let's see what can happen in 2 seconds. Can you play the video, please?
So, a stunning first part of the race for Michael Schumacher.
But possibly explained by how early he's coming in. You can see we've still got 48 of the 57 to go. So he's not even done 10 laps yet before making his first stop. So...
1.8 seconds. Blink, and yes, you have missed.
So that's what can happen in 2 seconds. 1.78 seconds to be precise, right? The F1 car, that's an incredible machine. In the 2 seconds that we counted, that moves from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour. That's the acceleration an F1 car can generate, right? And this again is another example of what I would call as integrative innovation. We are all used to thinking about innovation as linear. Innovation on a product, innovation on an idea, innovation on something else. But most of the innovations that we see are very integrative in nature. For this to happen in 1.78 seconds, the 20 people who are involved in the pit stop train like athletes. They don't train like someone who's changing a tire. They don't train like someone who's fixing something else in the car. They train on a daily basis like athletes. So they choreograph their movements on where do I put my left foot, where do I put my right foot, and where do each one of us stand. For them to be able to make this turnaround, they need to use tools that are specifically designed for these cars. But the tools alone don't make this work. To be able to make this work, they will need to coordinate information on when does the car move out. As you would have seen in the last example in 2023, there is nobody signaling to the driver that you can go now. The teams that are working on the tires, the tools automatically have a trigger. The moment the tire is locked in, the switch goes off. When all 4 tires are locked, the signal goes to green and the driver races past. So how do you pull all of this together is what I would call as integrative innovation. If you look at how innovation has been over a period of time, and I would like to call these as innovation eras. One way to look at innovation is to answer the question on purpose-led innovation, which is, what are we here for? Why are we here for? Has innovation really, really helped mankind? If you plot human life expectancy, and if you plot health span, which is how good these lives are, this is how it would look over time. And as you can see, both the life expectancy and health span have improved over a period of time. The graphs do diverge a bit in between, which is the good years and the sick years. If you see, that diverges a bit. But at this point in time, the good news is it's catching up. Both of these are narrowing. This is one way to answer the question on, with all the innovation that we see around us, is it really making things better for us? It, of course, is a question to ask, what do we mean by us here? This is just human life expectancy. Might not be the only way to look at, are things getting better? But this is one way of looking at how is innovation really helping us. And if you were to go back in time, this is how I would split how innovation over a period of time has been. Early days, what drove innovation was knowledge. People who were in the pursuit of knowledge drove innovation. And that was, as you see, in the form of saying, let me build something new. That's the first phase. The next era was one where what drove innovation was when people started thinking about innovation as strategy, which is how do I just get things right? An example there is of Toyota. The next phase, the next era is one where people said, let me build something that people love, right? Which is based on driving innovation as a means of experience. And we are all familiar with what we saw in the early 2000s. What we are today, in my view, is innovation as a system. Everything that we see around us works in an integrated manner. And this is about people building on what others are building, right? That's the phase we are in. The question we need to ask is, are we now moving from innovation as system, or are we moving towards innovation as purpose? Which is really asking the question on, what does the world need? And there are many companies who are doing this now, and that's what I want to leave you with on, are we really building what the world needs? From a time where we started to say, let's build something new, we've all the way come over time, and we are at a stage where all of us as leaders need to ask this question on, are we building what the world needs? The big question that we have is, how do you really embed this in your organizations? And I'll share a favorite story with you and then leave you with a very simple framework. Do you see any difference between these three here? You can't, it's the same image, right? But let me tell you the story. So there is someone these three people have been hired by someone to build something. And so these people are all placed about 1 kilometer apart on a road. And the protagonist of the story is walking by and asks the first one, hey, what are you doing? And the response is, I need a job, so I'm working on this stone. He walks a kilometer, goes to the second gentleman and asks, what are you doing? He says, you know what, I'm cutting this stone. I want to be the best stone cutter in the world. Another kilometer, he goes to the third person and asks, what are you doing? At that point, this person stops what he's doing, pulls out a blueprint, and then says, you know what, I'm working on the stone, and that stone is going to be sitting here on this cathedral. The question we need to ask is, in our teams, who do you see? Is everyone clear about the cathedral that they are building? And what can we do to be able to get everyone to first understand what that cathedral is and make sure they're able to link what they are doing on a daily basis to what that cathedral is, right? So how do we go about getting our people to see the cathedral and making sure they are building towards that? These are based on my learnings, so please see this as tips or learnings, and we can engage on a dialogue on this. The first one I would say is commitment, which is really, really leadership intent on how you may make choices. A business case that all of us are familiar with. Southwest started with a purpose which is very simple, to connect people to what's important in their lives through friendly, reliable, low-cost air travel. But to be able to deliver on the low-cost air travel, which was one of the key items of their purpose, they had to make a choice, and the choice is what you see. There's only one type of aircraft in Southwest Airlines. Any pilot in Southwest Airlines can fly it. Any mechanic in Southwest Airlines can fix it. Compare that to one other example, which is Delta. That's an airline that's doing well. But you can see the difference in terms of the choices they made. Different choices, different purpose. But you will need to be able to make the choice where we come in as leaders. Our commitment to our purpose by which we drive the choices that our organizations see. The second one is on culture. If you have the time, you should, or you will have the time, Google and ask for whatever your businesses are, what's really the core of the organization culture? And I asked this question for 2 companies. First one, of course, is P&G. And I was very interested in seeing what the answer will be. And this is what I saw. The core, and this again was an agent that I used, the core is PVP. And I was very happy to see that. Anyone who's been in P&G with P&G will know what PVP is. Very simple. What's the purpose? What are our values? What are our principles? And I asked the same question for Apple. What really is the core of culture in Apple? And what came out was this: to build the best products on earth. If we are able to ask someone externally to define culture of our organizations, what really is the core of the organization culture? And if you are able to hear back what your stated purpose is, then we know the culture is at work. So that's the second one, which is culture is what drives daily decisions that the organization makes and the organization sees. How do we drive a culture which is rooted to the purpose? The last one really is, how do you see purpose as a source of our solutions? Definition of opportunities, definition of problems in most businesses or in every business is usually a financial definition. The definition is my top line is not what I want, my bottom line is not what I want, I'm not growing share. But the solution to any of these problems has to be through your purpose. This is a great example. If you look at the stated purpose of Google, it is what you see here: to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And before they started building maps, the question that they asked is, what's the information that is there in the world that is not documented? The information that is there all around us, just the geography of the world, was not documented. Putting that together, organizing that, led to the solution, which is maps. And if I ask you, how many of you have used maps in the last 1 week? 100% of hands will go up, right? That's the example in terms of how do you look for solutions through your purpose, right? So this is one way or one framework, I would call it, to answer this question on how do you really embed this in your organization. The 3 C's: your commitment. As leaders, your commitment to your purpose. What choices are you driving? As leaders, what culture are we driving? The daily decision making in our organizations, are they done with the lens of purpose? And finally, when faced with issues, are we looking for solutions through our purpose? So that's the framework basis my learnings. And that really is what I wanted to share with you today on purpose-led innovation. And as I said earlier, do see this as notes from one practitioner to another. And I would be happy to take any questions or any comments you have basis your learnings as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saranathan. Sekali lagi, Bapak Ibu, we'd like to open the floor for any questions. Jika ada yang ingin memiliki pertanyaan, boleh langsung mengangkat tangan. You can do it both in English and Bahasa, of course. Yes? For the purpose-led session, anybody with a... Yes, sir. We'd like to help you with the mic.
Hi, Mark from Aerojaya Digital. In your experience, does purpose naturally create innovations, or does innovation naturally reveal a company's purpose?
In my experience, the second one can happen, which is there are times in which we will have innovations that can point to a company's purpose, right? But that's not always true. And I would say probably those are instances where maybe we gotten a bit lucky, right? Putting purpose first to ask ourselves a question in terms of what are we really here for is, I would say, a guaranteed way to move towards the innovation that we want. Getting an innovation that links back to our purpose is, I would say, is a coincidence, is a good coincidence, but doesn't always guarantee. And that is also when companies veer out of what they initially start wanting to do. It's not a deliberate pivot that they are making, but they move further away and away from their purpose. And that's when the organization turns around and asks, what are we here for? So asking that question first on what are we here for really, what really is our purpose, and using that to navigate the direction on innovation is what I would suggest what we as leaders should do.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Mike. We have one more question. Time for just one more question. If there is any, boleh silakan mengangkat tangan. For the Purpose-Led Innovation Series, I think they're going to try and catch you after the event, sir. Would you be willing for that?
Of course. Thank you for being a great audience. And I do have my colleague Ade in the room here who helped me with the presentation here as well. So thank you, Ade. And thank you all.